There are about 1,000 complaints one could have with the Wii, probably more legitimate than what I'm about to talk about. But I was sort of playing Snatcher the other week, and it did something with the controls without using motion controls that is more interesting to me than about 90% of the crap done with the Wiimote in a given year. So Snatcher, or as is otherwise known, one of the 3 or 4 games by Hideo Kojima that doesn't involve Big Boss or one of his descendants, is a Blade Runner ripoff. And when it came to the US in the Sega CD version, it did so with a really interesting sort of control scheme. Now Snatcher is basically a story-driven adventure game with some shooting sequences put in throughout its running time. If you only had a Sega CD controller when it came out, then you control these shooting sequences by just pressing buttons and pressing a bunch of different directions on the directional pad to highlight one of 9 quadrants on the screen, and then you just shoot at things by pressing buttons. But if you had a Sega CD controller and a Konami light gun, then things changed. Rather than just having to press buttons to aim and fire, which is not only really easy, but really boring, you would actually have to grab a gun next to you when these shooting sequences came up, aim it at the screen, and begin firing where you wanted to fire. Now, since Snatcher's shooting sequences came out of a surprise, they were usually meant as a sort of a shock thing that you weren't expecting, the actual act of taking up a gun and pointing it at the screen must have had a lot of really dramatic connotations to it, and some interesting sort of complications that arise from it being an actual physical object. The shooting sequences were actually pretty high consequence because there was no checkpoints or anything, so maybe when you grabbed the gun, you'd get scared and it'd get caught on something, or you'd misaim and you'd overcorrect or whatever, and so you think, well, maybe I'll put the gun on my lap, or I'll put it in my pocket, or I'll always hold it with me. And just like that, you're making decisions about strategies with the game outside of the actual game. You're not making decisions within the computer framework that the game operates in, you're making decisions about the physical objects around you, and you're actually becoming a participant in the game more so than you were now, because the physical world around you, the physical, and I mean, it's fun. It's fun to have a gun in your waistband, even if it's a little plastic gun, and think, oh, I'm a Blade Runner, or a junker, as they call them. I mean, it's an immersive, fun, in a childish way kind of thing, but it's still fun, and it has its own set of strategies. Now, the Wii games that deal with gunplay usually only use the Wiimote as sort of a motion-controlled mouse or an extension of your hand. It's never a real object. When you shoot someone in Red Steel, you get all the benefits of shooting someone strategically because you just get to point, you push a button, and they die. But you don't get any of these complications that you might get from a game like Snatcher. You don't get that feeling of immersion either, which is sad. I mean, Zack and Wiki is the only Wii game I can think of where the controller was actually an object in of itself with its own complications and strategies. And not only that, but the gameplay went around the Wiimote in Zack and Wiki, and it wasn't just a means of controlling regular, boring old gameplay. Snatcher and Zack and Wiki are connected in that respect almost, because gameplay revolves around the physical object rather than the physical object being a way of simplifying or making the gameplay easier. I don't know if that makes any sense. I hope it does. Like, we've got motion-controlled chainsaws, and we've got the ability to shoot someone in the head with a Wiimote, but I mean, when are we going to get a samurai game that you hold the Wiimote like this at your you can't see because it's below camera, but you hold the Wiimote at your side until it's time to take out the sword, and then it's time to go Toshi or Mifune and some bastards, and you have to always feel that Wiimote digging into your hip, reminding you that it's time to use the sword. You're going to use the sword. It's going to be awesome when you use the sword, and then you do, and then it's satisfying, rather than a sword fighting game where you're just always doing this, and you're always holding like this, and then maybe using the nunchuck to walk around or something, and it's kind of boring. Or what about a Doctor Who game where you're running around the TARDIS pulling down levers and sonic screwdriving things and being incredibly handsome? We might never see these games, but I would really love to see the Wiimote treated as an actual object and gameplay arise from that treatment of it as a physical object. So it not only feels more immersive, I mean, Zack and Wiki felt great even though you were just doing silly things like, flicking a lighter, but the actual act of just using the Wiimote to do it, to do things that you hadn't thought of before and to do things that you couldn't do on any other system, that was great. As it stands right now, most Wii games are, even the shooting ones, they're satisfying in a way because it's nice to point at shit, but at the same time, it's just a replacement for analog sticks or a mouse or anything, really. I'd love to see more Wii games that take advantage of the Wiimote as a real, immersive object because. That's all I've got to say. I guess I'll talk to you later.